There's a moment in every horror story when reality breaks. When the logical world you've always trusted suddenly cracks open, revealing something underneath that shouldn't exist. For most people, that moment never comes. They live their entire lives safely wrapped in the illusion that walls protect them, that locks keep danger out, and that the worst thing waiting in their bedroom is a bad dream. I used to be one of those people, until 3:17 in the morning changed everything. I was lying in my dorm room at Ohio State, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it, a sound that made every hair on my body stand on end. Scratching, but not from mice or settling pipes. This was coming from inside the wall beside my bed, deliberate and rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across wood in a pattern that felt almost intelligent. What made my blood turn to ice wasn't just the sound, it was the timing. Every single night, same time, same rhythm, same impossible location. So one night, against every instinct screaming at me to stay away, I pressed my ear against that wall. The scratching stopped instantly. Complete suffocating silence. Then, from somewhere deep inside that solid wall, I heard my own voice calling my name. Not an echo, not a recording. My voice, trapped in a place where no voice should exist, begging to be let out. If that just sent chills down your spine, hit that like button right now, because what I experienced was just the beginning of a truth that will shatter everything you believe about the safety of college housing. My name is Alex, and that night taught me that some sounds aren't meant for human ears. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 accounts that prove beyond doubt that dorm rooms, those tiny spaces we trust with our lives during the most vulnerable years, can become prisons for horrors that defy explanation. These aren't stories, they're warnings. Real students, real names, real terror that followed them long after they escaped their rooms. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing about your room isn't what might get in. It's what might already be there, waiting. Sarah Martinez should have known something was wrong the moment she stepped into room 312. It wasn't anything obvious, just a feeling, like walking into a house where someone had died. The air felt thicker somehow, charged with an energy that made her skin prickle. But Sarah was 18, starting her freshman year at the University of Vermont, and she'd just been handed the keys to what seemed like a palace compared to the cramped doubles most students endured. Room 312 sat at the end of the 3rd-floor hallway in Whitman Hall, isolated from the noise and chaos of typical dorm life. The space was magnificent. 12-foot ceilings, original hardwood floors, and a window overlooking the campus quad. During orientation, her RA mentioned the room's history with the casual tone of someone sharing gossip. "Room 312 has quite a reputation," she said, stopping directly in front of Sarah's door. "Emily Morrison lived here in 1987. Brilliant English lit major, absolutely obsessed with her studies. They found her dead during finals week. Sudden cardiac arrest. 20 years old, perfectly healthy, no explanation." The RA paused, watching Sarah's reaction. "Some students have reported unusual experiences, but hey, you got a single room as a freshman. That's practically impossible." Sarah felt a thrill rather than fear. As an English major passionate about Gothic literature, living in a room with such dark history felt like destiny. She spent weeks creating her perfect sanctuary: vintage furniture, heavy tapestries, and her collection of dark literature arranged like sacred texts. For exactly 31 days, room 312 was everything Sarah had dreamed of. The isolation allowed her to dive deep into her studies, often working until dawn when the building fell into that perfect, tomb-like silence. Then October arrived, and with it, the first sign that she wasn't as alone as she'd believed. It started with the cold. Not the gradual chill of autumn seeping through old windows, but sudden, violent drops in temperature that hit like walking into a freezer. Sarah's breath would form clouds in the air while her thermostat insisted the room was a comfortable 72 degrees. These Arctic zones appeared in specific locations, around her desk where she studied, and near the bed where Emily Morrison had been found. The cold felt alive, pressing against Sarah's skin with an intelligence that made her want to run. But where could she go? This was her room, her sanctuary, her home. Then the lights began their dance of madness. The ornate chandelier would flicker in patterns that seemed almost like Morse code. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, SOS. Her reading lamp would dim and brighten as if controlled by invisible hands, sometimes plunging her into darkness at the exact moment she reached the climax of whatever she was reading. If you're already feeling that creeping dread Sarah experienced, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, have you ever felt like your living space was trying to communicate with you? Because what happened next made these warning signs seem like gentle whispers compared to the screaming that was coming. The footsteps began on a Tuesday night at exactly 2:47 a.m. Sarah knew the time because she'd been watching the clock, unable to shake the feeling that something was about to happen. That was when she heard them, soft but unmistakably deliberate steps crossing her room in a pattern that became sickeningly familiar. From the door to the window. Pause. From the window to the desk. Longer pause, as if someone was examining her work. From the desk to the bed. Then silence. Every single night. The footsteps had weight, rhythm, purpose. When she got up to investigate, they would stop instantly, leaving her standing in a room that felt charged with invisible presence. But it was the notes that shattered Sarah's last grip on rational explanation. The first appeared on a Thursday morning, tucked between the pages of her copy of Frankenstein. Written in elegant feminine script that definitely wasn't her own, it read, Mary Shelley understood that creation and destruction are merely different faces of the same impulse. The monster's rage stems not from his ugliness, but from his creator's abandonment. Consider how this reflects the relationship between author and character, between the living and the dead. The analysis was brilliant, far beyond anything covered in her freshman courses. More notes appeared, always in that same elegant script, always containing analysis that seemed to come from a mind far more sophisticated than any undergraduate. Sarah began researching Emily Morrison and discovered that Emily had been working on a thesis about death and supernatural themes in American literature, the exact topics Sarah was studying. The notes weren't just helpful. They were continuing Emily's unfinished work, as if her academic ambitions had somehow survived death itself. At first, Sarah felt honored, chosen, but the notes began to change, becoming personal, demanding, controlling. You waste too much time on frivolous social activities, one read. Academic excellence requires sacrifice. I never attended parties or pursued romantic distractions. Neither should you. Emily's ghostly presence began dictating Sarah's life. Notes would appear criticizing her friendships, her social activities, her failure to devote every waking moment to academic pursuits. Sarah found herself isolated, afraid to leave her room for fear of disappointing her supernatural mentor. The final horror began on a November night when Sarah sat down to write an essay and felt her hands moving across the keyboard without her conscious control. Words appeared on the screen, brilliant, sophisticated analysis in Emily's voice, not her own. "You don't understand," Sarah heard herself saying in a voice that carried an accent she'd never had, her fingers typing words she hadn't consciously formed. "I was so close to finishing, so close to proving that literature can transcend death, that words can create true immortality. You have to help me. You have to let me finish what I started." Sarah tried to stop typing, but her hands wouldn't obey. Emily was using her body, her mind, her very existence to complete the academic work that death had interrupted. Sarah was becoming a vessel, a puppet dancing to the will of someone who refused to accept that her time was over. The possession grew stronger each night. Sarah would wake to find pages of Emily's thesis completed on her computer, emails sent to professors in her name, applications submitted to graduate programs she'd never heard of. Emily wasn't just sharing Sarah's room, she was stealing Sarah's life, one keystroke at a time. The night Sarah finally escaped room 312, she left behind everything, her books, her furniture, her carefully crafted sanctuary, because she realized that some collaborations come with a price too terrible to pay, and some roommates never learned how to leave. But Sarah's supernatural torment was just one face of dorm room horror. Because sometimes, the most terrifying realization isn't that the dead won't leave you alone. It's discovering that the living person you trusted enough to share your space with has been planning your murder in meticulous detail, and that the friendly smile they show you every morning masks a mind that has already decided you need to die. Marcus Chen learned this lesson in the most visceral way possible during his junior year at Penn State, when his dream housing situation became a blood-soaked nightmare that proved the human mind can become the most dangerous weapon of all. Marcus had been thrilled about his suite arrangement, 4 students sharing a spacious common area with private bedrooms. His suite mates seemed ideal: Jake, a quiet engineering major, and Tyler and Chris, who shared the adjoining room and seemed like the kind of guys who'd become lifelong friends. Tyler was a psychology major, which made his eventual breakdown even more chilling. He understood exactly what was happening to his mind and chose to embrace the madness rather than fight it. For the first month, their suite functioned like a model of cooperative living. But as October's pressure mounted and midterms approached, Tyler began to change in ways that would transform their home into a slaughterhouse of psychological terror. The transformation started with the smells, odors so foul they seemed to seep through the walls like a living thing. The stench wasn't just unwashed clothes or forgotten food. It was the sweet, cloying smell of rotting meat mixed with harsh chemical bleach, as if Tyler was trying to clean up something organic and failing. The smell would hit you in waves, making your stomach lurch and your eyes water. Chris reported that Tyler had covered all the windows with blankets and towels, living in perpetual darkness. But it was the sounds that first indicated Tyler's complete break from reality. Sounds that would wake Marcus from deep sleep with his heart hammering against his ribs. Hours of whispered conversations with invisible partners, Tyler's voice rising and falling in heated arguments with empty air. But worse were the other sounds, wet, squelching noises like someone stepping on raw meat, followed by frantic scrubbing. The sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor, and always, that rhythmic tapping, tap, 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 pause, like he was sending Morse code to demons only he could see. "Last night I heard him talking to someone for 3 hours," Chris whispered to Marcus, his face pale and drawn. "But when I looked through the crack in the door, he was completely alone, sitting at his desk covered in what looked like dark stains. And the stuff he's collecting, it's not just bottle caps anymore. There are pieces, organic pieces. I think some of them used to be alive." Tyler's academic work had become incomprehensible. Scribbles filled with detailed diagrams of human anatomy, torture methods, and step-by-step instructions for specimen preparation. His notebooks contained page after page of paranoid rambling about Zach Watchers and at infiltrators, and the need to eliminate threats through surgical precision. But Tyler's paranoia crystallized around one specific target: Marcus. If you're starting to feel that sick dread creeping up your throat like Marcus did, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what Tyler did next proves that sometimes the most dangerous person in your dorm isn't a stranger breaking in from outside, but someone who has legitimate access to your living space and has decided you're the enemy that needs to be dissected. Tyler began following Marcus around the suite, staring with eyes that had developed a glassy, predatory quality. But it wasn't just watching. Tyler would stand so close that Marcus could smell the decay on his breath, could see the dark stains under his fingernails that looked suspiciously like dried blood. "I know what you're doing," Tyler would whisper, his voice barely audible but somehow more terrifying than shouting. "I know who you're reporting to, but I'm documenting everything too. I'm learning your patterns, your vulnerabilities. When the time comes, I'll know exactly where to cut." Tyler's paranoid worldview had created an elaborate conspiracy where Marcus was part of a university surveillance network. In Tyler's fractured mind, Marcus wasn't a concerned roommate. He was a dangerous enemy who needed to be neutralized through what Tyler called our anatomical reorganization. The breaking point came when Marcus discovered that Tyler had been entering his room without permission, violating his privacy in ways that revealed the true depth of his homicidal obsession. Marcus found clear evidence that Tyler had been mapping his sleeping patterns, photographing him while he slept, and collecting samples: hair from his pillow, skin cells from his sheets, even saliva from his drinking glasses. But the most chilling discovery was Tyler's research notebook. Pages and pages of detailed observations about Marcus's body, his daily routines, his physical vulnerabilities. Tyler had been studying Marcus like a specimen, documenting when he was alone, when he was vulnerable, when he would be easiest to acquire for experimentation. One entry, written in Tyler's increasingly erratic handwriting, read, "Subject maintains predictable sleep cycle. Deepest REM occurs between 2 to 4 a.m. Bedroom door lock is standard residential grade, easily bypassed with modified tools. Recommend chloroform application during vulnerable window for clean acquisition. Dissection should begin with extremities to maximize consciousness duration for optimal data collection." When Marcus confronted Tyler about these violations, Tyler's response revealed a complete disconnection from reality that was more terrifying than any supernatural entity. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" Tyler said, his eyes reflecting light like an animal's, spittle forming at the corners of his mouth. "You think I don't see you taking notes about everything I do, everything I say? But I'm smarter than you think. I've been studying you too. I know exactly how you're put together, and I know how to take you apart." Tyler pulled out a thick folder filled with photographs he'd taken of Marcus, sleeping, studying, showering, completely unaware he was being documented like a laboratory animal. "I know your anatomy," Tyler continued, his voice taking on the clinical tone of a medical examiner. "I know where your arteries are closest to the surface. I know which bones break easiest. And I know how long you can stay conscious while I work." The situation reached its blood-chilling climax when Chris discovered what Tyler had been building in his room, a makeshift laboratory that looked like something from a serial killer's basement. Hidden under his mattress were not just improvised weapons, but surgical instruments, scalpels, bone saws, and restraints that Tyler had been fashioning from materials stolen from the engineering building. But most horrifying was Tyler's procedure manual, a detailed document explaining his plans for what he called live anatomical study. The manual included diagrams of the human circulatory system with notes about optimal incision points for consciousness preservation, step-by-step instructions for specimen restraint and preparation, and a timeline for data collection phases that would keep the victim alive and aware for maximum research value. "I found this taped inside his desk drawer," Chris said, showing Marcus a hand-drawn floor plan of their suite with Marcus's room marked in red ink and detailed notes about acquisition timing and body disposal protocols. Marcus made the desperate decision to transfer to a different dormitory that very night, not even waiting for official approval. He slept in the library for 3 days, too terrified to return to his room even to collect his belongings. The university eventually removed Tyler from housing, but only after campus security found detailed murder plans and a collection of practice materials that included small animals Tyler had been using to refine his techniques. Marcus learned that sometimes the person you trust enough to share your living space with can become your executioner, and that the scariest monsters are the ones who used to be human, who understand exactly how much pain the human body can endure and who view your suffering as nothing more than fascinating data to be collected. But even Tyler's descent into homicidal madness seems primitive compared to what Jessica Williams discovered at UC Berkeley. Because in our hyper-connected age, the most dangerous predators are the ones who can destroy your entire existence without ever touching you, who can turn your most intimate moments into weapons for psychological torture, and who can make you question your own sanity while maintaining the perfect facade of innocence, all while planning something far worse than digital violation. Jessica Williams thought she understood what privacy meant, until David taught her that in the digital age, privacy is just an illusion that predators use to make you feel safe while they systematically destroy everything you are. Jessica had been excited about her assignment to one of Berkeley's co-educational dormitories. Her fourth-floor room housed female students, while the floors above and below were designated for male residents, an arrangement designed to promote healthy social interaction while maintaining appropriate safety boundaries. Her roommate Emma was perfect, a fellow environmental science major who shared Jessica's passion for outdoor activities and social justice. The co-educational environment provided opportunities for the kind of deep intellectual friendships that make college transformative. But during spring semester, Jessica began noticing that David, a computer science junior from the floor below, was paying unusual attention to her daily activities. David seemed friendly but socially awkward, and his questions about Jessica's schedule initially seemed like innocent conversation. "What time do you usually get back from your environmental science lab?" David would ask casually, but Jessica noticed his eyes had a hungry quality that made her skin crawl. "I noticed you studying in the library yesterday around 8. Do you always go there in the evenings? You looked so peaceful, so focused. I watched you for almost an hour." His questions demonstrated an uncomfortable level of interest that went beyond normal social curiosity. As weeks passed, David's attention became more obvious and intrusive in ways that made Jessica feel like prey being stalked by a predator who was savoring the hunt. Jessica began noticing David watching from windows and doorways, appearing in locations where she was going as if he had advanced knowledge of her plans. But worse than his physical presence was the feeling that he was somehow inside her head, anticipating her thoughts and movements with an accuracy that defied explanation. If you're already feeling that violation creeping under your skin like Jessica did, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to understand how sophisticated digital predators have become, because what David did next shows the terrifying extent to which tech-savvy stalkers will go to own every aspect of their victim's existence. The true horror began when Jessica discovered David wasn't just watching her, he was living inside her digital life like a parasite, feeding on her most private moments and using that intimacy to plan something that would make his electronic violations seem gentle by comparison. Jessica's laptop became a window into her soul that David could access at will. But it wasn't just technical intrusion, it was emotional rape. Applications would open to photos of her sleeping, taken through her own webcam. Files would appear containing transcripts of her most private conversations with Emma, conversations that had taken place in their room when they thought they were completely alone. Her smartphone became David's instrument of psychological torture. He would activate her camera during her most vulnerable moments, while she was crying, while she was changing clothes, while she was having panic attacks about the violation she couldn't prove. Her photo gallery would contain images she'd never taken, pictures of herself sleeping, showering, having breakdowns, all captured through devices she'd trusted to protect her privacy. But the most devastating violations were emotional. David had been recording her private conversations with Emma about her deepest fears, her childhood trauma, her insecurities about her body and her relationships. He knew about her eating disorder that she'd never told anyone about. He knew about the sexual assault she'd experienced in high school that she'd only shared with Emma during a late-night breakdown. He knew about her father's alcoholism, her mother's depression, her terror of abandonment, and he was using all of it against her. Jessica's social media accounts became David's playground for psychological manipulation. He would post comments on her photos that referenced her private conversations. "You look tired. Are you having those nightmares again?" Or, "That dress really flatters your figure. You shouldn't worry so much about what happened in high school." Comments that seemed supportive to outsiders, but that Jessica recognized as proof that her most private moments were being monitored and weaponized. Jessica discovered David had been using the information gathered through surveillance to map not just her digital life, but her emotional vulnerabilities, her physical routines, and her psychological breaking points. He wasn't just stalking her, he was studying her like a predator studies prey, learning exactly how to break her down completely before moving to the next phase of his plan. David had been contacting Jessica's friends and family members, but not just to manipulate her relationships. He was gathering intelligence about her support network, identifying who would look for her if she disappeared, who would believe her if she tried to report him, who could be turned against her through carefully crafted lies about her mental state. "I'm really worried about Jessica," David would tell her mother during carefully orchestrated phone calls, his voice perfectly calibrated to sound concerned rather than predatory. "She's been talking about hurting herself. She mentioned feeling like she wants to disappear, maybe go somewhere no one could find her. I think she might be planning something dangerous." Jessica's parents, genuinely terrified by these reports, began calling constantly and expressing panic about problems that didn't exist, creating the exact emotional instability that David could later point to as evidence of her deteriorating mental health. But the most chilling discovery came when Jessica found David's detailed psychological profile of her, a document that read like a predator's manual for breaking down his chosen victim. The profile included analysis of her emotional triggers, her response patterns to stress, her physical and psychological vulnerabilities, and step-by-step instructions for isolating her from her support network. One section, titled Acquisition Strategy, outlined David's plan for what he called transition to physical phase. The document detailed how he would use her compromised mental state and damaged relationships to convince everyone that she had voluntarily left school, how he would forge communications from her explaining her departure, and how he would ensure that no one would look for her until it was far too late. The most terrifying aspect of David's plan was not the sophisticated technology or the psychological manipulation. It was the realization that he had been preparing to make Jessica disappear completely, and that everyone who cared about her would believe she had chosen to vanish. Jessica discovered David had been recording her private conversations not just for violation, but to study her voice patterns and emotional responses so he could create convincing audio recordings of her, explaining her decision to leave school and cut contact with everyone she loved. He had been mapping her handwriting through assignments he'd stolen from her backpack, practicing her signature, learning to forge communications that would convince her family and friends that she was safe and happy somewhere far away. The final revelation came when Jessica found David Zaka's timeline, a detailed schedule for her abduction that included specific dates, locations, and methods. David had been planning to drug her during a odd chance encounter in the building's laundry room, transport her to a location he'd prepared off campus, and then begin what he called the real relationship, while maintaining the digital fiction that she had simply decided to start a new life elsewhere. Phase 1, digital integration complete. Read one entry in David's timeline. Subject's psychological profile fully mapped. Support network compromised. Isolation protocols successful. Phase 2. Physical acquisition scheduled for spring break when absence won't be immediately noticed. Phase 3. Transition to controlled environment. Subject will learn to appreciate the depth of connection we've already established. Jessica realized that David's electronic stalking hadn't been the crime. It had been the preparation for a kidnapping that would have made her disappear so completely that everyone would believe she had chosen to vanish. Jessica made the heartbreaking decision to transfer to a different university immediately, not even waiting for the semester to end. She abandoned 2 years of academic progress and meaningful friendships rather than risk becoming David's controlled environment with experiment. These 3 accounts from dormitories across America reveal a truth so disturbing that most people refuse to believe it. The spaces we call home during our most vulnerable years can become hunting grounds for predators who understand that the greatest weapon isn't violence. It's the victim's own trust, isolation, and the terrible realization that no one will believe them until it's far too late. Sarah Martinez discovered that death is not always the end, that some obsessions are, so powerful they can reach across the grave to claim new victims, and that academic ambition can become a supernatural hunger that consumes not just one life, but any life unlucky enough to cross its path. Her room in Whitman Hall became a portal where the past refused to stay buried, where Emily Morrison's unfinished work became a trap that nearly cost Sarah her sanity and her soul. Marcus Chen learned that the human mind can become the most dangerous weapon of all, that mental illness can transform a friendly roommate into a homicidal predator who views murder not as a crime, but as a fascinating research opportunity. Tyler's descent into madness proved that sometimes the monster isn't hiding under your bed. It's sleeping in the room next door, sharpening surgical instruments and planning to keep you conscious while it studies how you're put together. Jessica Williams discovered that in our digital age, privacy is just an illusion that sophisticated predators use to make you feel safe while they systematically map every aspect of your existence in preparation for making you disappear completely. David's stalking campaign showed that modern predators do not need to break down your door. They can destroy your life from a distance, turn your loved ones against you, and make your own disappearance seem like a personal choice rather than a carefully orchestrated abduction. The most chilling aspect of these accounts isn't the supernatural possession, the homicidal breakdown, or the sophisticated stalking. It's the realization that in each case, the victims had no way of knowing what they were facing until they were already trapped in situations where escape meant abandoning everything they had worked to build. Sarah had no warning that room 312 was still occupied by its previous tenant, whose academic obsessions had survived death itself. Marcus had no indication that Tyler's friendly demeanor masked a deteriorating psychological state that would eventually turn him into a predator who viewed murder as a research opportunity. Jessica had no clue that David's awkward social interactions were cover for a comprehensive preparation campaign designed to make her disappear without a trace. If you're currently living in a dorm room, if you've ever felt like someone was paying too much attention to your daily routine, or if you've sensed that your living space had a presence that didn't belong there, trust your instincts. Hit that subscribe button if these stories have opened your eyes to dangers you never considered. And remember, the next time you're alone in your room late at night, working on assignments or trying to sleep, you might want to listen carefully to the sounds around you. Because sometimes the scratching in the walls isn't just the building settling. Sometimes the footsteps in the hallway belong to someone who's been planning your murder in meticulous detail. And sometimes the person watching you through your webcam isn't content to just watch. They're preparing to make you disappear so completely that everyone will believe you chose to vanish. Drop a comment below if you've experienced anything that made you question the safety of your living space. Because the most important thing these stories teach us is that we're not alone in facing these hidden dangers, and that sharing our experiences might be the only thing standing between other students and the predators who view college campuses as hunting grounds filled with isolated, vulnerable prey. Before you go, check out the playlist in the description for more true college horror stories that will make you see campus life in a completely different light. Because in the end, the most terrifying realization isn't that these things happened, it's that they're still happening right now, in dorm rooms across the country, to students who have no idea what they're really facing. Sweet dreams.